Hello everyone, I'm Broughy1322 and in this video I'm going to be showing the fastest fully upgraded vehicles without a spoiler around a circuit. This is a special edition spin-off video within my usual testing series to give an alternative view on some of these vehicles with different categorizations. If you want to know how all vehicles perform in a variety of different classes and formats, check the annotation on the screen or the link in the description for the full playlist of videos, and of course feel free to subscribe for future updates. So we've got quite an interesting selection of vehicles in this video, all cars that don't have spoiler upgrades on them, and these are the 10 quickest. In 10th place we have the second best sports classic car in the game, which is the Z-Type. Bit of a shame that the Z-Type doesn't have a spoiler, or more so I guess it's a shame that the Sterling GT does have a spoiler. It's been well said in previous videos of mine that if the Sterling GT didn't have a spoiler, it would be on the pace of the rest of the sports classics cars, which used to be a very balanced class, but as it is right now, the Z-Type is about 4 seconds per lap off the pace of the Sterling GT because of that lack of a spoiler. Now in 9th place we've got the 5th best muscle car in the game, which is the Duke of Death. Now you can't get this in GTA Online, of course. This is only for returning players in single player, but the lap time that it gets is a 1:10.1. Not that bad actually, it's quite quick considering it's only a few seconds off the pace in the muscle cars class. It used to be right up there before we had the Pisswater Dominator and the Sabre Turbo Custom, and if it had a spoiler it would be right up there as well, but it doesn't actually get a spoiler upgrade, it doesn't get that added traction. Now in 8th place we've got the Contender. This is the brand new best SUV by a long way. Most SUVs in the game don't have spoiler upgrades available to them. Some of them, there's one or two that do, but most of them don't, and the Contender is far and away the quickest of the SUVs now, brand new to the game, and it doesn't have a spoiler. A 109.5 makes it very quick, and you know, like you've seen, it's quicker than the Z-Type and the Duke of Death, so very quick there from the Contender in the SUVs class. Now in 7th place we've got the Furora GT. The Furora GT is basically a 770 without a spoiler. So if you look at the game code, the Furora GT and the 770 are pretty much exactly the same in terms of their characteristics, but the Furora GT is one of only 2 sports cars that doesn't get a spoiler upgrade, so it doesn't get that added traction. For anybody who doesn't know at this point, adding a spoiler upgrade on your car will give you increased traction, it will give you increased grip, and that means that you can go faster at a higher speed around the corners. So it's always important to have that spoiler upgrade, but obviously these cars aren't able to get that. Now in 6th place we've got the Exemplar with a 108.7. It's just a slight bit quicker than the Furora GT. The 3rd best coupe in the game, and the Exemplar used to be the quickest coupe before the spoiler upgrade was introduced. I'll talk a bit more about that in the future, but yeah, the Exemplar is a very quick car, and it would be the quickest if it did have a spoiler available to it, because it is less than a second off the pace of the top coupe. But yeah, the fact that it doesn't have a spoiler does make it a disadvantage in that respect in terms of cornering. Now in 5th place, we're into the top 5, and first up we've got one of only 2 supercars in the game that doesn't have a spoiler upgrade. That is the Bullet. So the 20th best supercar in the game, that makes it the worst supercar in the game with a 108.4. The Bullet is very slow for the supercars class, taking into account that the RE7B gets around the track in 57 seconds, and it's also not that much slower than the Drift Tamper in 4th place, the second sports car that doesn't have a spoiler available to it. No spoiler upgrade for the Drift Tamper, a 108.3 here, only a slight bit quicker than the Buffalo, and both of these cars really at this present moment would be perfectly well balanced in the muscle cars class. So it was amazing that the Drift Tamper wasn't placed into the muscle cars class and it was placed into sports, because it would be perfectly balanced. But when you consider that the Bullet is only a few tenths of a second slower, both of those cars would actually do well in the muscle cars class, along with also the Buffalo as well from the sports class. So you know, it's really frustrating that we have those class misallocations, but that is Rockstar, and there's nothing we can really do about it these days. So the top 3 now, and in 3rd place we have the Trophy Truck. A bit of a bigger difference in lap time there from what we've just seen, with a 107.3. The second quickest off-road vehicle in the game in terms of solely off-road vehicles. Obviously in terms of off-road races, the BF400 dirt bike is obviously the quickest, but in terms of cars and the off-road class specifically, the Trophy Truck is the second quickest, but it is pretty much identical in its stats to the Desert Raid, which we're going to see in 2nd place. So it doesn't matter which one of those you get get either of them. They're pretty much exactly the same in terms of the stats, so you know, don't need to worry about that. Obviously the Desert Raid here did come up 1/10 of a second quicker in my testing, but that's pretty much near as makes no difference, identical. So these are the top two, the second and the third quickest vehicles in the game that don't have a spoiler upgrade. Both of these vehicles don't get that, so they are very, very quick in that respect, just naturally, just without that extra traction from a spoiler. And like I said at the start of the game, when the game first came out on Xbox 360 and PS3, spoilers never used to increase traction, and back then, when we were also testing vehicles in their stock forms as well, there was one car that used to do reasonably well, but it was always thought that it was the best car in the game when it never actually was, and that is of course the Adder. So the Adder is the 18th quickest supercar in the game. That means it's the third slowest supercar in the game. Only the Voltic and the Bullet are slower than the Adder. With a 105.8, this is actually slower than a lot of other sports cars as well, and that's pretty much because it doesn't have a spoiler. If the Adder had a spoiler available to it, it would be on the pace of what used to be the top supercars, so the T20, the Osiris, the Zentorno, the Turismo, those kind of supercars. The Adder would be on that level of pace if it had a spoiler, because it would have increased cornering grip and increased cornering speeds. But because it doesn't have a spoiler, it is terrible in the corners. It really is very, very bad in terms of traction, and it gets absolutely decimated by the vast majority of other supercars. And obviously now, you know, given that we've got the three brand new supercars that obliterate everything, it doesn't really matter whether it has a spoiler or not, because it's never going to be competitive regardless. But yeah, back in the day, in the very early stages of GTA Online, and I imagine there's a lot of, you know, brand new people to the game from new gen or PC specifically, spoilers never used to add traction, and it was actually an update, one of the early patches to the game, that added that functionality. And I think it was a negative aspect to the game, because it made cars easier to drive, to be honest. And obviously all of the cars here would be a lot more competitive in their classes if if spoilers didn't add traction. You know, these are the ones that suffer the most from it, because they don't have spoiler upgrades available to them, so they don't get that added traction that all the other cars do. Yeah, it is a little bit of a shame that is the case, but it's been the case ever since a very, very early patch, so, you know, it's not going to change now. But these are the cars, the top 10 quickest cars that don't have a spoiler upgrade. They don't get that extra traction in the corners, they don't get that extra cornering speed, and because of that these are the sort of lap times that they get. But these are a very small number of the overall vehicles in the game. You know, there's hundreds and hundreds of vehicles, and a lot of them do get a spoiler upgrade. These are just a small selection of those that don't, and yeah, they're not very competitive in their classes apart from one or two. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this was an interesting video for you guys to watch. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate all the support as always, and I'll see you next time.